I hear a lot from our clients is they will say, I work hard so I can play hard. And every time I hear that, it kind of hurts my heart because I think they've got it backwards. If they loved what they did, if they really felt like they were on a mission, like they were the lead hero of their movie, they would make different choices. What industry do you want to work in? Because I'm going to tell you, don't work for a technology company right now. Look at all the other areas that are really growing. That's where you should go. You can still do the same work you've been doing, but just do it for a different industry.
Happy birthday to you.
Hey guys, welcome back to the No Half Cakes podcast. Always good when you can pronounce your own show correctly. Awesome episode coming to you today. I'm excited for it. Before we get into that, just a quick bit of housekeeping. If you are new here with me, first of all, welcome. I am pumped to have you here. Just so you understand how this format works, this episode today is my favorite type. These are our long form versions of the show. So I will sit down with a guest. We'll just talk about life. We'll have a real raw conversation about wherever the spirit takes us. We'll talk about the ups, the downs, the good, the bad, the ugly, and just share some life with you. Other versions of the show on Mondays, I do a Mindset Monday version, which is meant to give you just a powerful, positive perspective to carry through the week. And Saturdays, I do something called a Strategy Sprinkle, playing off that cake theme. It's meant to be a very short, practical, tactical tip to help you level up in your personal or professional life, or both. That being said, today, like I said, is a Wednesday version of the show. So I'm here joined by a guest who, when I first found this guest, I was immediately intrigued by her level of passion for purpose. So the very first thing I saw was how lit up our guest is on purpose and helping other people find that purpose and live in that purpose. And I thought it would be an instant win for our community and wanted to share her with you. So without further ado, Mrs. Super SJ Braun, thank you for joining me here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. And Jim, as you know, we're friends. So now you can call me SJ.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
So tell me, I'd love to hear a little bit more about your backstory about how you got so lit up on purpose. Was there some sort of event that really sparked that for you? Or take me through the process.
It, like most things, has been a journey. I spent most of my life working in retail, entertainment. I worked for some, Fortune 500 companies. And I worked in the corporate office in, very often very high level positions. And somewhere around my 40s, I kind of fell out of love with what I was doing. It didn't matter how much money I was making. It didn't matter how many things I had. I wasn't really that happy. And things have never really brought me joy as much as people have. So I knew around my early 40s, things were starting to change. I went out on my own. I started my, own business, which was, I would say it was a failure in a lot of ways, financially. But it opened the door for me to realize that I was still unhappy. I was still trying to figure it out. And around my early 50s, I got sober. So that was the next thing that kind of shook me, changed my life, and I realized I want to do things really differently for the second half of my life. That's assuming that I'm going to make it to 100.
Right.
So because of that, I really started dialing into purpose and meaning. I knew that there were a lot of people in my circle of influence. They'd already tapped into that. I was on my own self-discovery, and I started to realize that the place where most people seemed to be messed up was in their careers. That was just my, coming from coming from a business background, I just kept thinking, people are really kind of not being able to find their meaning in their work. And I'd already had a business that was all about interns, and that was something that I would hear from them all the time. They would say, "Well, I'm doing the internship so I can get experience because I want to get a good job." But it wasn't really about purpose or meaning. And from that, we born our company, Super Purposes, where we help people in a very short amount of time learn how to get a career that has purpose and meaning and can easily turn into a magnificent obsession.
That's amazing. So I got to ask you your perspective on this, because when I hear all that, one of the things I think, and I'm sure you know better than I do in this, but I think a lot of people wind up picking a career that's going to be a safe choice in terms of dollars and cents in the bank and stability, and they've got their set schedule. They don't choose something that really lights them up. And I think a big part of that is they don't even understand who they are, like their authentic self, enough to understand what it would be to even light them up. So I'm curious your perspective on that person finding their authentic self and living their authentic life, and the connection to finding a purpose and career.
It is challenging because I think, to your point, one thing that I hear a lot from our clients is they will say, "I work hard so I can play hard." And every time I hear that, it kind of hurts my heart because I think they've got it backwards. If they loved what they did, if they really felt like they were on a mission, like they were the lead hero of their movie, they would make different choices. But some people go through much of their lives or most of their lives or their entire lives really playing that secondary character, or, even, the role of somebody who just comes in as filler. And they're not really living their own movie. I like to use a lot of analogies. So, we're probably going to talk about movies a little bit. But I think that this is an area that a lot of people have this problem. And most people will wake up somewhere around their 35 to 55-year-old zone. They'll be in that time period where they wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning, they're staring at the ceiling, and they're saying to themselves, "Oh my God, why am I here?" It's that existential crisis that some of us have multiple times a day. Some of us have it occasionally. We'll get a glimmer and we'll go, "Oh, why am I here?" And so those are the people who are really, really ripe to change their careers and to go towards something that will light them up in a way that maybe their current career doesn't.
Yeah. So how does someone make that switch? Like, what is the spark moment? Because I think a lot of people think, hey, once I'm in my 35 to 55 year range, it's too late, right? And you're already stuck with whatever you're doing, and you don't have time anymore to make the switch and find it out. So you might as well just write it out and count down the days, right? How many times do you hear someone who says, "Only 9 more years till I can retire"? Yeah, I don't want that life. I'd be like, "Damn, I gotta retire in 9 years? Heck no!" Like, I want a life where you blur the line between work and play. Like, you can't really tell the difference between which one you're doing, right? What are your thoughts?
You are speaking my language right now. I think it's all connected. And there are people who put those time limits on themselves. And I think they've fallen into the myth that 35 to 55 is too old. We're going to have in our lives 8 to 10 careers. And so the timing is now, where whatever age you are. I'm 61 and I'm still doing, really amazing. I get amazing opportunities that come my way all the time to do speaking engagements or workshops or working with really super cool companies. And my age is not limiting me or my career. So I think if you believe in the myth, then, that's probably going to happen for you. And if you can fathom for a moment that things can be different, then they can be. The process is rather challenging, though, but really, I break it down into 3 steps. So, do you want to know the 3 steps?
Yeah, please do.
Okay. So, the first step is you have to know what you value. Whenever I ask people this, most people will say, I'll hear the same thing from pretty much everyone. They'll fall in line with like these top 10 values, and they will be things like financial security is one of them, family, uh, religion, their spirituality. Like usually those are in that top 10. And then I'll say, okay, well, that's great. Let me give you a list that's going to be very different. It's going to have the top 10 in there, but it's going to have a lot of other things. And I'd like for you just to circle these other values. And when people start going, oh, I really love that, and they're able to circle it, you can kind of start to see the spark, like the unicorns and the rainbows coming out of their head. You can start to see that they light up and they're starting to get excited about just even their values. Um, for example, somebody will ask me, well, what do you value? My top 2 values, my first one is innovation. I always want to work with innovative people, innovative companies. I look at things and I'm trying to figure out, okay, how can we use that for our company? That's a really cool idea. What would happen if we put it in a super purposes package? So I love innovation. It is my number 1 value. My number 2 value is humor. I want to be around people who make me laugh. I want to be able to make other people laugh. I don't want to be with a bunch of stick in the muds, beige, boring, and bland people. So I value that so much that those are the people that I surround myself with. And so again, when people can really figure out what they care about, what they value, that leads them to the second step.
Because when you start talking about that first step, the first vision I had in my mind was talking to a little kid, like 3, 4, 5-year-old kid, and saying, hey, what do you like? Do you like dinosaurs? Do you like astronauts? Do you like fire trucks? I feel like that is so aligned with that. Like when you're a little kid, you know what your values are, and you value puppy dogs and T-Rexes, right? That's the most important thing to you. But somewhere along the line, we beat that out of people to the point that like, you've got to go get a career and get a 401k and you got to get all this crap. And the point that like, all of us just want to be loved, appreciated, seen, and heard, and feel like those little kids who didn't get that, right? And we want to have that same thing where someone comes up to us and says, hey, what do you value? And the answer might still be T-Rexes and dinosaurs for some people, and that's cool, no judgment. But like for a lot of us, we don't ask that. We don't feel seen and heard by people. So I just wanted to hammer that point home. I feel that so heavily, and I think that's so important to really understand what your values are, and for people to have that conversation. I think that's so important.
I'm getting a chill right now from you because you were speaking to an entire country of people that are disconnected from that. It's again, it hurts my heart when I think about that. I'm curious what you value. Do you have like 1 or 2 particular things that are just like very at the top of your list, or near the top of your list that maybe people wouldn't expect?
I don't know if it's something people wouldn't expect. For me, I think, I use the term loved, appreciated, seen, and heard often. And to me, that is one of my real strong core values is to both feel that for myself and be aware of that, and to make other people feel that. Because I think that there's a really innate need for people to feel loved, appreciated, seen, and heard. And it's funny we're even talking about this because I was literally just thinking about that this morning, how difficult it is to accomplish that because it's not something that you can force. I cannot make you feel loved. I can love you, but it doesn't mean you're going to feel loved, right? Because for every person, that definition is going to be very different on how they feel loved. So for me, one of the things that I take a lot of intentionality in is to understand the important people in my life. What is their love language? What makes them feel seen and heard? Because it's very different to sit and listen to someone or speak with someone and to try and see them or hear them. But if they leave that interaction without feeling it, right, and I can't control that, I can only do so much. But if I am intentional about understanding what their languages are, and I show up for them in the way that they need to be seen or heard, that can make a difference. So for me, I think if we just show up as our authentic selves, and then I don't know if you want to define this as my core value or not, but I feel so strong that if we show up as our authentic selves and give people permission to be themselves, permission to feel seen and heard, it unlocks them to be themselves. And I don't feel like I need to force my opinions or my beliefs in someone else. If I can walk alongside them and give them a platform to feel like it's okay to be themselves, it sort of gives them permission to live their authentic life where they feel comfortable to go out and pursue that passion, to pursue that career where they don't feel stuck in this, where they can have that conversation, where they can feel those things. So that's it for me.
So what's coming up for me right now is your value. If I were to look at my, value sheet, you would fall in that area of authenticity and belonging, that connection, the people connection. And I think most people don't even know what it means to be authentic. They've just kind of bought whatever has been sold to them, like, getting married and having kids and moving to the house with the white picket fence. And to your point, the 401k and the this and the that, the 2-car garage or whatever. And that is just what many, many, many people, and there's nothing wrong with that either, that can be part of your life. But then when you look in the mirror and you say, who am I? Do you have the answer? That is not something that's been programmed into you, or that your parents have, told you, oh, you're going to be this and that. We have a client who, his parents, he's a first generation American. His family moved from China. His mom and dad always said, we want you to become an accountant, because he didn't want to be a doctor and he didn't want to be a lawyer. So the accountant was the zone. He went to school, he got the grades, he ended up becoming a CPA. And at 40 years old, he contacted us. His parents, both his mom had passed away like 5 or 10 years ago, and now his father passed away. And he said, now I can do what I really want to do. He was 40 years old. So there's a lot of people out there who are living their life for somebody else.
Yeah, and the sad part is a lot of people don't even realize it. In that instance, I think that person was aware of it, but I think there's an even bigger percentage of people who are living their life for someone else's dreams without even realizing it, without realizing they just don't have their own, right? They're blocked off, everything from the time that they were little and loved dinosaurs and fire trucks. Like, they got it hammered in their head that they're supposed to have 2-car garage and the 401k and the white picket fence, and that's just what they've moved to, right? But they've forgotten the fact that they have their own, their own original programming, their own original dream that they just got rid of, right? And that's one of the reasons why I love what you do.
Thank you. Well, do you want to hear number 2?
Yeah, let's get to 2. Let's get back on track.
Well, I have a feeling that you and I could go a lot of places.
Probably.
So the first one is values. Know what you value. Really understand that. Then the second thing is know what you're gifted at, what you are good at, and what industry you want to work in. So for some people, I'm going to take myself for a moment. Right now I work in career, but I've always been interested in, uh, I've always been interested in the environment, and I've always been interested in end of life. So when I take those two things together and I add innovation, that led me to green funerals. I'm very interested in this area. I'm very interested in people getting turned into compost when they pass away. And I know some people will say, what a freak, man, she's weird. And that's okay. I'm very interested in this. It's very innovative. It's very earth positive. It's great for the environment. It's inexpensive for people to do. And so it's an area that I would definitely want to pursue if it becomes my, eighth, ninth, 10th, career in the future. And so just kind of drilling into, well, what am I good at? What am I good at funerals? No, I don't know anything about funerals, but am I good with people? Yes. Am I good at understanding and empathizing with people's loss? Yes. Am I, so all of those qualities that I could bring, am I good at business? Yes. So I would be able to bring that with me to a green funeral business. Whether I work in sales or marketing, or if I decide I want to run my own company, but that would be something that I can visualize. So to understand what am I good at and what industry am I interested in, that's the second step. We have a lot of people, a lot of clients who we helped get jobs at Twitter. And when they lost their jobs, my phone was ringing, text messages, and they were like, oh my God, what am I going to do? I don't have a job. I don't know what to do. I'm working in technology. As you know, you helped me get this job. Where do I go now? And I said, drill it back to, what industry do you want to work in? Because I'm going to tell you, don't work for a technology company right now. Look at all the other areas that are really growing. That's where you should go. You can still do the same work you've been doing, but just do it for a different industry. Those industries need you. And we were able to get people, situated and into fresh jobs, in a very short amount of time. So that's the second step. Did you have any questions about that?
No, I was just going to say how much I love that. And I think, finding your gift is definitely, understanding your authentic self and then finding your gift is such a, I'm so aligned with it. I believe strongly that your gift will make room for you, right? And when you understand what your gift is and what your purpose here is, and you walk that out, opportunities will come to you, especially when you are being your authentic self. So I'm aligned with steps 1 and 2 so far pretty heavily.
Okay, well, let's see what happens with step 3.
All right.
So step 3 is probably my favorite step because we have our clients go on a deep dive down the rabbit hole. I call it the innovation rabbit hole. And we send them to do research on platforms like TED.com. So when you go to TED.com, if you just type in my case again, green funerals, maybe 10 people show up, 10 people who have talked on the topic, 10 people who care about the environment and end of life. If I get more general and maybe I say, okay, let me just do end of life. Now the door opens to 300 people. So I can kind of play with that a little bit. I can watch the videos, I can do some discovery, and I can say to myself, that's the person I want to work with. This is the hot tip. What most people do is they go online and they'll go to like Indeed or they'll go to LinkedIn and they'll fill out some sort of online application for a random job that'll just have their title. They're going about it exactly the wrong way. This is the wrong way to look for a job. You need to first decide, what do I care about? What am I good at? and what industry would I be interested in working my gifts, and what company, people, environment should I be working for and with. And when people have this shift of thought, when they realize, oh, I get to choose the company, I'm like, yeah, you're the hero of the movie. What part of that do you not understand? You're not just randomly going out there and going, okay, well, I'll just take whatever comes my way. Yes, opportunities will come your way. Yes, maybe you should grab on to those that seem interesting to you. But you're the hero. This is your journey, your story. So you get to decide, where do I want to go? What job do I want to have? Who are the people that I want to work with? Who do I want to surround myself with? It empowers people in a way that is so remarkable. And so in this deep dive, another place where I send people is How I Built This with Guy Raz. He's a pretty famous podcaster that came out of NPR, and he does these huge shows with, presidents of really remarkable, innovative, cutting edge companies. And again, if you just went to Google, if you just typed in Guy Raz, How I Built This, and then typed in the subject matter of what you're interested in, the industry, all of these podcasts are going to pop up. And you can listen to any of them and you can say, that's the person I want to work with. That's the company that embodies what I care about. And so now you are being drawn to the sort of marriage that you should have in your career. It's going to feel totally different than any other job search that you've done before. It's really exciting. I always tell people pick a minimum of 9 companies. So we want some easy to get into, easy to connect with companies. We call those like the ground level companies. We look for some mid-range companies that might be a little bit more challenging, but still totally doable to get into, to get interviews. And then the aspirational companies. And again, when clients come to us, we had one client and all she wanted to do was work for Microsoft. And I was like, okay, not that big of a deal. And in her mind, it was going to be impossible to get that job. And I was like, do you know how big they are? And do you know how much they need somebody like you? It's not going to be a snap. It's not going to be instant. It's not going to be a breeze, but we can get you a job there. I mean, that's not a big deal. And she's working for Microsoft now. So I think that's the third thing for people to kind of wrap their mind around is they have to know, where do I want to work? And then you need to start developing relationships in those places. And then you need to, as soon as you make enough friends, as soon as you have enough meetings with people, you're going to be able to get into the interviews that are not even online. 80% of all jobs are not even online. 80%. But everyone's spending hours after hours after hours on LinkedIn filling out applications for only 20% of the jobs, where that's where all your competition is going to. So being different, going through a different door, going through the relationship door, hanging out with people, getting to know people that are like you, that's a more mission-oriented, value-oriented job search.
Yeah, I love that. And I think a lot of that too has to do with possibility. So, I think a lot of people look at, is it possible for me yes or no, and they're basing that on the definition that they believe this thing exists in. I've talked in the past about what is a podcast, what is a book. Does a book have to have 12 chapters? Each chapter has to be 5 pages, or could you write a book that has 35 chapters and some chapters are 2 pages, some chapters are 30 pages? Doesn't make it any less of a book. If you want to write a book, go write a book. If you want to work in the green funeral space, there's nothing stopping you from starting a blog on your off work hours and starting to investigate this or start to talk about it or start to look into it, and to really truly be your authentic self, to lean on your gift. And let me tell you something, if I am looking to hire someone and I come across a candidate, even if they're not actually applying for the job, I happen to come across this person on my radar because they are authentically, authoritatively speaking about a topic that they are truly passionate about, confident in, I'm hiring that person in a heartbeat. Right? You can't train authenticity. You can't train that level of giftedness. But when someone is showing up in that way, man, it makes life so much easier. And I think people need to understand that. I don't want to step on toes here. You're the authority in this, but I agree so heavily in the fact that if you just show up as your authentic self, lean on your gift, and forget the traditional methods of is it possible or not, just start freaking doing it.
Yeah. I approve of your message. Yeah, I do. I think that when people start to do these exercises, they will realize that it is possible. It will fuel the tank. It will make them feel like, okay, maybe I can have the sort of life that I dreamed about as a child, or I dreamed about when I was in college. And then instead of traveling the world, I end up settling down in my hometown. You know, and it is whatever you care about. It's whatever, gets you excited. I'm thinking about this one guy just to demonstrate how he chose where he wanted to work, what happened to him. So this one guy lived, I want to say he lived in either Pennsylvania or Ohio. He graduated from college. He wanted to get an internship with the NFL. Now, this was back in the day when the NFL only had 13 teams. And so he was calling every team across the country saying, hey, I'd like to be a marketing intern. And everyone was like, no, we don't have an internship program. No, thanks. Oh, we're all taken care of, whatever. They all kind of passed on him. He ended up calling the home office in New York and he said, hey, here's who I am. Here's what I'd like to do. Would you have any opportunities? And the guy on the phone said, you know what? If you're ever in town, stop by. Stop by. I'd love to meet you. So what did this guy do? The guy got into his car. He drove to New York. And the next day he showed up in his rumpled suit, probably smelling like French fries, fast food from the drive. And he met the guy and he said, hi, my name is Roger. And I was in the neighborhood. From that internship that he got, the internship turned into a position in public relationships, public relations for the NFL. And that job turned into a bigger marketing job. It turned into the next position, the next position, and the next position. And today, Roger Goodell is the commissioner of the NFL. This was somebody who knew that he was the hero of his own movie. It's easy to tell the story backwards now, right? That was easy for me to demonstrate, but it happens all the time to people who get this thinking. So, yeah, I think you said it best when you talked about the possibilities, that people lose the spark of the possibility.
I have to imagine it was an easy thing for him to do to get in the car and to bet on himself and to show up and to worry about who's going to judge me, who's going to make fun of me, who's going to laugh at me, who's going to hang up the phone on me, who's going to shut the door in my face. Because it's a very real possibility. He could have, spent all that time to drive there and the guy says, no thanks, or I'm out for lunch.
Right.
I've seen in so many instances where someone bets on themselves and has a complete disregard for being judged and just takes action, how big it pays off. And I think one of the keys there is to realize that, like, you're going to be judged regardless of what you do. You are being judged no matter what. Right? There's been so many instances in my life where I can call back on being judged for doing something right or wrong by somebody, no matter what I did. There's always someone to be judging you on what you're supposed to be doing. Right? And those are usually people who are looking at you as a reflection of them. Right? They're just trying to look at their own life and see what the thing you're doing and how it affects them.
Because the people who tell you, no, it's a bad idea, or, who do you think you are? Or, oh, I would never do that. Well, yeah, they would never do that. But that doesn't mean that you shouldn't do it. If you have an idea, you need to go, okay, I'm going to do this. And even if I fail, and if I fail once, and if I fail twice, and if I fail 5 times, I'm just going to keep going.
Yeah. Well, a lot of times those people who are judging you or telling you whether it's possible or not are basing it on their own definition of possibility. Right. So this goes back to what we talked about. If they were raised to believe that their future was that white picket fence, it's not possible for them. Doesn't mean it's not possible for you, but in their version of reality, the thing that you're going to go do doesn't exist. Right. So you got to realize that along the way, you are going to be the villain in somebody's story, no matter what. No matter how good you try and show up for everybody every day, at some point in time, you are going to be the villain of somebody's story.
Yeah.
Right. And you got to make sure that you are not the villain of your own freaking story. And I cannot emphasize that enough. No matter how hard you try, no matter how hard you show up, someone is going to have a problem with you.
Super wise. I'm thinking about one of our clients. She was a VP for a huge conglomerate, a multi-billion-dollar company. And she knew that her job was, they were merging different teams, and she knew that her job was coming to an end. So she went to get a new job, and she'd been in this job for about 20 years. And she was having the feelings like, oh my gosh, I haven't interviewed for a long time, and I'm not sure if I'm going to, do well or whatever. Well, she went to the interview. She went through, all 4 different people, and then she ends up in the CEO's office. He asks her one question. She gets totally tongue-tied. She starts rambling. He asked her a question. It was something like, what are the softwares that we should use for our company? She just starts rambling off all these different softwares. And he kind of, looks up at the ceiling, and he looks back at her, and he said, after a couple of minutes, he goes, thank you so much for meeting me today. I got to go. And she was just horrified because this guy is basically like walking out the door. She calls me in her Uber, and I just said, go back to the hotel, take a hot bath, order room service, have a cocktail if you like. But call me before 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, your time zone. I think she was in Colorado. She calls me, and I said, here's what I want you to do. I want you to get on the phone, talk to the administrative assistant, get an appointment with him tomorrow morning. You're going to spend the night in the hotel anyway. So get a first morning appointment with him and ask for a do-over. And she was like, I can't do that. And I go, yes, you can. And you're going to, because what do you have to lose? The guy already thinks you're an idiot. Now you're going to go in and you're going to show him that you're not. That it was just a moment that you got caught up in. And I said, by the way, how are you going to answer that question? And she told me, and I said, perfect. So the next day, so she calls, she gets the appointment. She said, I only need to see him for 10 minutes. I don't need a half an hour or whatever. I just need a 10-minute meeting with him. She got the appointment. She shows up the next day. He sits down. He has a huge smile on his face. And he said, okay, let's do this over. He asked the same question. He said, what kind of software would you recommend that we use for our company? And she said, I don't know. What is your problem? And he was like, And he started explaining the problem. She had all of the solutions. They shook hands. They ended up having like an hour-long meeting, and she got the job. Had she listened to the judgment in her own head of, I can't do that, she would have never had the opportunity that she got. And now she's actually making more money than she was working for the big conglomerate. So I think bravery in the face of, awkwardness or moments when we just start to sweat and we're like, oh no, this is not going well. And you just become the brave person that's in you, it will reap you amazing rewards.
100%.
Yeah.
And I can't help but tie this back to what I said before about feeling loved, appreciated, seen, and heard. That guy, the first time when he asked the question, was not seen or heard. He just got a generic, let me just spit an answer back because I want to seem important, right? Same thing, man. I'll talk about till I'm blue in the face. Feeling loved, appreciated, seen, and heard is the key. I'll stand on that.
You really captured that. Yeah. That's exactly what he was looking for. He was looking to have a dialogue.
Right.
He wanted to have a conversation, which most people don't do in interviews. I think it's very weird. Have you ever, I know I've done it before where someone asks you a question and you answer and you wait.
Yep.
And then they ask you another question and you answer and you wait. And before you know it, the interviewer is up here and you're like down in the gutter. Interviewers really just want to have a back and forth conversation. So every question that is asked, it's great to have a throwback question on that same topic. I'm wondering, have you ever had a moment where you've been a little bit like, oh, I don't really want to do this, but the bravery came out on you?
Yeah, 100%. I can think of a lot of them.
Well, tell me one.
The biggest thing to remember in that is that it's a person on the other side. It's not, right? It's not this picture you make up in your mind of, an interviewer who's interviewing you for this position. It is a person who showed up at work today, and this is the thing that they have to do. They are just another person. Right? So when you treat them like a person, have a conversation, not just spit back an answer. And I think a lot of that comes down to, the individual who's interviewing may not feel seen and heard, so they just want to word vomit all the stuff that they think they need to feel somewhat appreciated because they don't get that anywhere else. Right? And I truly believe the more that we focus on this sort of thing, the bigger the impact it has across the board in our professional relationships or personal relationships, because you're not looking to just word vomit out. You already feel seen and heard. So you need that validation from seeming important to this person's interview. You just show up. You're your authentic self. And I can think about a ton of times where I've been interviewing someone for a position and we've had this conversation where I just said, hey, look, pause for a second. Forget I am who I am. Forget you are doing what you're doing. Talk to me as just Jim. I'm just a person who's having a conversation with you about a topic. Like, let's remove the tension from the situation. Just show up as yourself. And I've gotten a lot of great employees to work for me that way, because you can remove the pressure from the situation, the expectation that it has to be a certain way. Like I said before about what is a podcast, what is a book, what is a job? Like, your purpose is to be there to serve the greater goal of the company.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean you have to turn this widget this way, this widget that way. That's the only way you can show up. I'd hire a robot if I needed that. I need a person. I need you and your gift. You know what I mean? And when you remove that pressure and tension, allow people to show up and operate in their gift, that's where the magic happens.
Yes, for sure. I'm thinking about that in interviews, when people do have that real, legitimate, authentic conversation, that's the person who gets the job. Like, I want to work with the person that I can carry a conversation with. I don't want to work with the person who's, giving me, to your point, the word vomit answer, and then just sitting there and looking at me waiting for the next question. I want to start thinking about the person. Is this somebody that I would have coffee with? Is this somebody when I'm having a problem? Can I go into their office, close the door, and cry my eyes out? Is this someone that, would maybe join our, I don't know, our hula hoop troop after work? Um, you start looking at that person as a colleague rather than I'm interviewing this individual.
Right.
Yeah. That's really good. That's a very, very hot tip for people who are currently interviewing. It's a mistake that everybody makes.
And I think much the same way, like even if it's not an interview scenario, but it's the person who's serving you your drink at Starbucks. Forget that their sole purpose in this equation is to hand you a drink. They are a person with real needs and real problems. And just for you in that 13 seconds of your interaction, you just show up, greet them like a person and be kind to them and give them some level of feeling seen, heard, and appreciated. Like that could make all the difference in their day. They might be humdrumming their way through that job that day because they needed to pay the rent or their medical bills for their kid. You have no idea, right? You can't take on everyone else's burdens, but you can be a kind, genuine human and just see people. And it costs you nothing, but the impact it has for allowing people to feel that changes so much.
And I mean, I think we can also be the recipient of their gifts too, because they might say something fun or funny or give you the smile that you needed that day.
I was going to say that it builds. It requires someone to show up first and to break that barrier, right? Where someone has to be the one to go first and say, hey, I see you. What's your name? Have a great day. It could be as simple as that. But, allowing each other to show up as our authentic selves gives other people permission to do the same.
Yep. And now I want some Starbucks. I'm not going to lie. I'm ready for a cup of coffee.
So I have a couple questions I'd love to ask you before we wrap up. I know we're running low on time here. So my first question I would love to ask you is, what is the best piece of advice you've ever gotten?
Oh my gosh, I've gotten so much advice. Don't worry about what other people think of you. Just worry about what you think of you.
Love that.
Yeah. And I don't even really worry about it. I mean, I guess there are moments maybe that I do where I'm like, am I too weird for this crowd? Every once in a while, I'll have that thought. And I'm like, should I tone myself down for this talk? And, I think it's good advice. Just, it goes back to being who you authentically are. And it can take you a while to know, though, a while for you to grow into your own skin. Unless you're, growing up in a really extraordinary household with parents that, are able to give you guidance and really, encourage you to go into the areas that maybe are not favorable or popular at the time. Yeah. What's the best advice you've gotten?
I'll have to say this right here: a rising tide lifts all boats. That was something my grandfather always used to say when I was a kid, and I never knew really what it meant until 4 or 5 years ago when I started to really piece it together and figure it out. But for me, that's it. It's not worrying about selectively trying to raise this boat but not touch that boat. Just operate in a way that can benefit everybody. Not worrying about specifically trying to help one person and leaving everybody else out, but just continue to raise the tide for the next generation.
I love it. There's more than enough for all of us.
100%.
Yeah.
Love that. So my next question for you, because this would not be the No Have Cake podcast if we didn't talk about cake at some point. So I'm going to ask you, what is your favorite flavor of cake? And is there any type of memory associated with that?
So my favorite flavor of cake, I'm going to go with the red velvet with that tangy cream cheese frosting on top. And my memory of it is my mom was an avid baker. She actually made her red velvet cake with red beets. That's where the red velvet originally came from. Back in the South, they used to make it with beets to get that red coloring. Now everyone uses, whatever the red dye is, but to get that, and it always had a little bit of that earthy flavor to it, because I think beets have a little bit of the, being a root vegetable, it's got a little bit, but it's sweet. So yeah, I'll think about my mom whenever I think about that cake. It was pretty delicious. Yeah, so now I want coffee and cake.
I can't say that I've ever had it with beets before, but I will definitely have to search that out because I'm interested in that. Is that the art, like the original version?
Yeah, that's the original version. You wouldn't know it when you're eating it unless somebody tells you. Because it still has that sweetness and you're not going to go, is there a beet in here? But yeah. Yeah, what's your favorite cake? I'm gonna start drooling here in a minute.
I go typically chocolate peanut butter whenever the option comes up, or I'll go key lime pie. Those are my two favorites.
Those are great. Those are great. And I love how different they are. Like one is that kind of sour. Key lime always kind of gets me back here. I love it. What is there meringue?
Yeah, usually a little bit on top.
Yeah. Okay. And then, yeah, the peanut butter and chocolate, you just can't go wrong with that.
It's just it's a classic for me.
There's nothing bad about that unless you have a peanut allergy. But I'm just going to say I'm a yes. I'm showing up for both.
All right. And Starbucks on the way. Sounds like a plan. I love it. So my last question for you, just if I could I pray for you? Just close this out.
Sure. I will take whatever I can get.
I love it. I like, you know what? I've talked in the past about being in No Half Cakes and what it means for me. And this is a first for this podcast. To be clear, I realized I wasn't living that version out as full as it needed to be. I've talked about financial success, physical success, emotional success, spiritual success, but I realized I didn't integrate enough of that into this experience. And I wanted to start doing that here. So I thank you for being the first.
I love it.
Awesome. Dear Heavenly Father, I just want to thank you for this opportunity to pray together and to spend time with my dear friend SJ. I want to thank you for continuing to put her in positions where she can show up and encourage people and show up as the bold and courageous version of herself, her authentic self as you designed her, to show up and empower people to live their passion, to live their purpose, and to continue to show up using the gifts that you've given them to continue to impact the world in a positive way. I ask that you continue to lift up every person who hears this today, to be their authentic selves, to remove whatever shame they've given themselves and whatever self-doubt they carry around, and just live life as originally designed and according to your plans, and show up in a way that glorifies you and helps to just be the best version of themselves and lift each other up as we continue to operate in a way that glorifies you and lights a path for everyone to be their best selves as we love to rise the tide for all of us. In your name, amen. SJ, thank you so much for this experience.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to have a super day. I can tell.
I appreciate it. Me too. This has been a lot of fun.